Okay, my name's Evan Scheibel for CG Toots Plus, and in this tutorial we're going to take a pretty in-depth look at some of the fundamental operators inside of particle flow for 3D Studio Max. Now this is an unscripted, really informal, kind of more of a conversational type video, so I'm just going to kind of build a really basic dynamic setup. Something that can be used procedurally in other projects and transferred around, and I'm just going to go through the entire workflow from start to finish. It's going to be quick in regards to like the design and things like that. It's not going to be fancy. It's going to be a base particle setup that you can use to attach things to and to insert into other scenes and things like that, and use on a much broader scale than just one application. Now when I say application, I mean various ways of using this particle system, not necessarily different software applications. Okay, so what we're going to do is, like I said, look at a few of the fundamental operators. We're not going to go through all of them. I might do a video in the future that goes through every base operator and describes it really in depth. But this one we're just going to look at basics, and we're going to build kind of a procedural mortar blast. Now I have a preset on, well, actually I don't anymore. I think it might still be available on my website particleflow.net, but it was available on my personal website, but I don't think it's there any longer. But I built a preset using this technique, a little different. So if you want to check that out, shoot me an email or go ahead and post in the comments, and I can see if I can link to that again, or use the setup we make here and as a preset for you guys to check out. And but let's just look at making this now. Sadly, this is probably not transferable to any other software application other than 3D Studio Max. So this is pretty specific to this software application. Okay, so with that said, let's jump in and let's see what we've got here. I'm having some graphics card. Oh, sorry about that. I'm having some graphics card difficulty here. So if you see some artifacting and things like that, don't panic. That is just something going buggy with my OpenGL. Okay, so like I said, we're going to make a really quick, simple mortar blast. This is a technical demonstration. This is supposed to be explaining the technical side of particle flow, not necessarily creating a shimmering, glamorous effect. So if you're looking for a finished product that you can take and use, you know, in your work, or if you can take and use somewhere else, you're not going to find that here. You're going to find some really in-depth explanations of how to make, of how to use techniques in other applications to make that. So let's get started. Enough blabbering here. Oops, there we go. Let's look at a few of these operators here. Okay, I have quite a few extra operators because I've got some plugins installed like Krakatoa. I've got a RealFlow plugin installed, and Fume Effects, and I think that's it. I don't have... Oh, and I also have Particle Flow Tools Box 1 because it came with the Creativity extension for 3D Studio Max 2009. So if you have Max 2009, make sure you're fully updated with the Creativity extension because it gives you a lot of functionality advancements within Particle Flow with Box 1. So what we're going to do is build this flow right from scratch. We're not going to use a preset. We're not going to use a standard flow. We're going to drag out the preset flow. Or no, I'm sorry. We're going to drag out the empty flow. Now, like I said before, what this does is sends the information into the render engine and allows these particles to be renderable. Now, that's not to say that the points themselves are renderable, but it allows you to send any information in this flow to your selected render engine, unless, of course, like I said before, you're using Krakatoa. Now, what I like to do is hide my description over here. It's handy if you're getting started with particle flow, but for this instance, we're just going to go to display and we're going to untick description. Now, usually I'll untick my depot as well, and if you'll see what happens if I do that, I lose that all, and I want to kind of have that for this tutorial. Okay, so we've got the empty flow pulled out here. And let's go through a few of the basic fundamentals of what we need to do. Now, before you start a particle system, you need to have a good idea of what it is you're trying to make. In this case, we're trying to make an explosion, but not just an explosion. We're trying to make a couple different things. One, we're trying to make an explosion with an initial trajectory. That means we're going to have a target. We're also going to have a source for that only emits maybe a couple mortars in this case. So we want a really specific thing that we're trying to do, but yet we want this to have the ability to be used procedurally and just to be stuck in a project by another artist. If you're a technical director or like a senior or something like that, then you want to be able to pass this on throughout your workflow and throughout your studio, and have others use it with minimal frustration, because not too many people are really versed in this kind of thing. I mean, I don't know for sure, but it doesn't seem like that. Okay, so from here, what I want to do is just think about that. Okay, already you can see we have our icon here, and what we want to do for this is we're just going to leave it there. But if you notice, there's an arrow pointing down here. And that's going to be the initial direction that the particles are emitted. So we're going to want to change that in a little bit. But first, what we want to do is set up what we're going to use as our ground plane. Now, we can do that very easily. And what we're going to do, like I said, is set this up at the beginning. So this isn't necessarily a concrete way to work. This is just how I choose to do it. So what I'm going to do is go to my Create panel, go to Helpers, and then in my flyout, I'm going to go to the space warps. I'm going to go to the flyout, and I'm going to choose deflectors. Now I'm going to choose just the normal deflector in this instance, and the reason for that is we're just making a ground plane. Now, if you're using, let's say, a sculpted terrain or something like that, what you want to do is choose U deflector, and then you'll see when we drag that U deflector out, we have the option of picking an object, and what you can do is pick your terrain and then use that in place of this deflector. But this will be pretty much a placeholder for whatever it is that we're going to do, and you can just insert things in its place if you're using sculpted terrains or things like that. Okay, so we're just going to delete this here and then move on. And what we want to do with this is just make sure that our bounce and our variation, chaos, friction, inherited velocity, and all that is set right now just to 0. That way we don't get any action. When the particle hits this, it's just going to plop, and then we can move on from there. And that's how I like to work generally, is start off with nothing and work my way up, rather than start off with crazy, bounces and different things like that, and try to rein it in. Okay, so I'm going to hit 6 on the keyboard again and bring this back up. Now, you'll see, oh man. Okay, you'll see here, we don't have, if I move the slider, I don't have any particles being generated. The reason for that is I have no birth operator. Now, the birth operator, when you drag that out, it creates a new event with a display operator already inside. So what you want to do is come out here, and you really need to think about now what it is that you want this this emission point to do. In this case, it's going to be a mortar cannon. So we really don't need it to emit 200 particles, you'll see here, over 30 frames. Now, there's two options with this. You can choose rate, which will emit 60 particles every frame for 30 frames. So let me kind of, we'll move on to that once we have our thing set up. But for now, we're going to choose amount. And in order to get the particles all to emit on the first frame, I'm just going to choose 0. You can do 0 and 0, but I'm going to do 0 and 1. And I'll explain why in just a bit. And my amount, I'll put like 2. That will ensure that at least 1 comes out. Okay, now, in order to get the particles to emit from that icon, I'm going to have to choose another operator called the position icon. And, okay, position icon right there. And we just drag that out and make sure you don't have a red line, because if there's a red line over that, when you place your operator, it'll replace whatever operator has the line through it. So you want it to be a blue line wherever you want it to be, and then just let go of your mouse and drop it in. Now, with this, it works in sequential order. So you want the birth to be first, then you want the information of where it's being birthed from to be added to the flow. Now in this case, it's the position icon. Now you have a few different options in here. Now if you have an animated icon, you can choose either lock on emitter, which will obviously, it's pretty self-explanatory. It will lock those particles on the emitter as that emitter moves. You can also choose to inherit emitter movement, and when you choose that, you have a multiplier value that becomes available here. And that's pretty much how much of the emitter movement is inherited by the particles. So if it's moving fast and you inherit 100%, the particle, even though it might emit straight up, if the emitter is moving right, then what's going to happen is going to inherit 100% of that motion, and it'll move right just as the emitter does, but still move up as well. So depending on that multiplier percentage will depend on how much of the emitter movement the particles inherit. We're not going to use that here. You also have a few options here. See, we're using the position icon. If you have one of the other icons that I explained in one of my past quick tip videos selected, like the sphere or the cube, you can choose to have these particles emit from the pivot point, the vertices, the edges, the surface, or the volume. So depending on what type of emitter you have will depend on which one you want to use. In this case, we're just going to use volume, which when we connect these, you'll see what that means. Now when we scrub through, still nothing is happening. So, okay, we have a few other things that we need to take care of, and let me just up this here and up this here just to demonstrate what I mean. So now you can see that those particles are being emitted in the volume of a flat icon. So again, depending on the icon you have chosen, will depend on how that looks when it emits. So I'm going to put this at probably 1 and let's say 5, and we'll put the amount to 3. Now our goal is to have one particle emit. So when we scrub through, we've got a bunch. So let's squeeze this back. We could go 0, 0, and 1. I think that might do the trick. Whoops, actually. So let's check. And you can see it didn't. There's no one particle being emitted. So what I'm going to do is go to emit stop 1, and we'll see if that does the trick. Now again, this is unscripted here. I'm just... Okay, still no particle. So you just kind of keep tweaking that until you get the amount that you want. And usually you can up the... I'm going to just move this off the screen here. I'm going to put the particle amount at 5, and I'm going to move up my birth. There we go. We've got 3 being emitted. Bring my amount down so there's only 2's fine. We can work with that. Then again, you just tweak that till you've got what you want. So there we have 2 being emitted. Now, like I said before, we have to kind of mess with our icon here, and I'm going to hit E on the keyboard and bring up my rotation gizmo, and I'm going to hit up here, I'm going to hit the snap angle, or the angle snap tool, and I'm just going to kind of get this to where I need it to be, and, whoops, wrong one, and just highlight my emitter here, and I just want it to kind of have a trajectory of what a mortar cannon might look like. And that looks pretty good. And I'm going to hit R, which will bring up my scale, and I'm going to change the orientation to local so it's right on here, and I'm going to scale this down. So now we've got just a little kind of, what you could stick on the end of a barrel or something like that, and we've still got our particles being emitted. Okay, so let's move this now to where it's a little more manageable. So I'm going to hit W and just kind of move this over and up. I'm only just working my perspective view just for pretty much screen real estate's sake here. So I might move it back just a bit. Okay, now, so you can see kind of how this setup is going to take shape. And we've got that one particle being emitted. And what we need it to do now, like I said, it really helps to stand back and take a minute to think about what you want to accomplish. So now, from this point, what we want to do is make these two little particles shoot out and kind of lob their way over to around the middle of this deflector and then explode. Sounds difficult, but it's not really. So what we want to do is we want to add a few things. One, I'm just hit 6 to come back in here and take a look over what we've got. Now, since I'm here, I know I'm going to need a gravity force, most likely, and I know I'm also going to need a certain amount of speed. So we can get complicated, or we can just choose the simple route. And I'm just going to go simple. I'm going to drag out a speed icon, or a speed operator, drop it in here. And I'm also, since I'm right here in the depot, I'm going to drag out a force right here and put it right underneath that right there. Okay, now one other thing, I'm just going to drag this off to the side. One other thing we also know that we're going to need is a target, because we want to be able to point this mortar blast at a specific target. Let's say if we're using it, I don't know, we're using it to create a game effect, or we're using it to create a film effect. We want to be able to hit something, obviously, like a tank or a building site or a bridge or something like that. So we want to add a target. So there's a couple ways you can do that, but I'm going to choose again the easy way, and I'm going to find my find target test and drag that out and stick it right in the end here. Okay, now we've got a lot we just did, and let's cover it. So we drag out the speed icon here. Now the speed automatically sets itself to 300. So you're going to see when these particles get emitted, they go and they just kind of fly around and they start hovering around that icon in the middle, because essentially this find target, it creates an icon and then it draws that in a kind of orbital effect. It draws the particles to that icon. So we're not going to worry about that just yet. But you can see now we've got these particles flying out at a pretty decent speed. And I think that this speed looks pretty decent. 300 looks like it might work, but we're going to have to adjust that again once we adjust our find target. But these options within our speed operator are very, very simple. You have the initial speed, which is a generic unit, and then you have the variation. Now, depending on the variation, let's say you set your speed to 10, and you have a variation of 9. Well, the speed is going to be anywhere from 1 to 19. So that variation just kind of throws a little bit of randomness into your speed so that you can have some natural look to that. You have a few direction options. Along icon arrow, which is what we're going to use, which just pushes the particles along with that icon arrow. Icon center out, that'd be good for like explosions and things like that. Icon arrow out, again, same thing. Kind of shoots it in an array type look out from the arrow. Random 3D just throws them all over the place. Random horizontal will throw them all over the place randomly on the horizontal plane, and then inherit previous will do exactly what it says. If there was a previous motion on there, that will inherit it. Reverse, same thing. Divergence is just how much of a chaos factor there is within that effect. So depending on how you set that will depend on how random and chaotic your particles move. Now, a lot of these things here carry over, so we're not gonna, every time we see these, I'm not going to explain what they do, because I'm pretty sure that most of you guys can say, oh, divergence, oh, that means the chaos factor. Variation, that means the randomness in whatever variable it applies to, and things like that. So you should be able to kind of carry those things on. Now, force, you can see we have nothing here, but we have a force space warps box. So what I want to do is come out here to my create panel and go to helpers, fly out this menu here. Whoop, I think, never mind. I'm going to space warps, fly out the menu here. And under forces, I'm going to choose gravity. And I'm going to drag that out, make sure the arrow points down. I'm going to come into the edit panel. The strength 1 is fine, the K is fine. All that is fine at default. So I'm going to come in, press 6 on my keyboard, and we have two different ways we can add. We can either hit the add button, click on it, or since we have our viewport covered up, we can hit by list, and that's going to bring up our hierarchy, and we can choose our gravity, hit select, and it'll plug it in there. Now the influence is in tenths scales of 10, so it goes up to 1,000%. I'm going to bring that down to probably 500 for now. Like I said, I like to work lower and work my way up rather than have just the particles fly off and do some crazy random thing. Okay, now you can see we have our fine target. Oh, well, let's take a look real quick at what we've got now. So you can see they kind of fall and they kind of move. They kind of just don't worry about the target much anymore because that force, they might come back, but I don't think they will. But anyway, that force now is kind of overriding the orbital effect that would have. But you'll see if we move this, the particles will kind of follow it, the trajectory. And that's going to be really handy later on when we want to really, specify where we want these particles to hit. So we'll bring this back up. And from this fine target, now this is a test event. And when a particle tests true or meets the criteria specified within our settings, it will be this, like I said before, will be sent through to the next event. Okay, so what we want is, see it says test true if distance to target point is less than 1. That'll work for us fine. Because we're not really going to use the test event too much. So what we're going to do next is add a collision spawn. Okay, so we're going to add this collision spawn. I'm going to get my little arrow here, you can see, and I'm going to drag it over here and stick it out of the other side, just so we don't get things confused. Now in here, I'm going to, again, see deflectors, we have the box here. I'm going to add by list, deflector, select, just like the forces. We have a ton of options here, and we're not going to go through all of them, but what we're going to do is explain the important ones. Okay, so we want this to spawn on first collision. Now, if you remember, we set our deflector options all to 0. Now we want to change those a bit. I want to put the bounce to about 0.25. That should be good right off the bat. And the variation, I want to change that to like 30%. That's got to be pretty high. It's got to be random. The chaos, again, pretty high. I'm going to set that to, I'll say 40%. Friction, not too important, but let's give it some. Inherent velocity, that doesn't matter. We're not going to be really dealing with that too much. And that should be good for just some basic parameters to get started. And then in here we have that added. Spawnable percentage, that means the amount of particles in percentage, in a percentage value that are spawnable. When they hit, they'll spawn. How many of them do you want? So in this case 100, that's what we want. Now the offspring's important because this spawn is going to essentially act as an explosion or as the basis of an explosion. We can obviously do tons more with this, but we're going to use just this as a basic explosion. So we want quite a few. Let's say 45 offspring. That means when the particle hits the deflector, it will spawn 45 other particles. Parent, what we're going to do is choose, we're just going to leave that on bounce. Inherited velocity, well, let's just look. Here's what we've got now. You can see they just kind of go blah and down through they go. Now, there's a couple of reasons for this. If we come over and look here, you can see they just fall through and they kind of just don't do very much. So we want to change that, obviously. Come back in here, and what we want to do is change a few of our deflector parameters. First thing we want to do here is, all these should be okay. Yeah, those should be fine. Another thing we want to do is come out here again, choose our deflector. We want to put our bounce up just a bit, chaos down a bit, variation down a bit. I shouldn't have went so high on those settings. See, we've got a little bit difference there. Okay, and now at this point what I'm going to do is scale down my target here. So now we've got, they hit a little more precisely. And now what we want to do is we want to control this, what we would say is our debris. We don't want it to go just bang off like that. Okay, and a couple things we need to do. One, we need to come into our find target. We need to change the speed to, like, I don't know, 50. Oh, not 510, 50. We'll put a variation of just a tad on there. And we will ease it in a bit. And let's see how that changes things. There we go. You can see now, we don't really need to ease in quite so much, so we can, let's just take that off. And I'm going to hit the question mark, which will, you see, yeah, we're kind of slow here, but that's fine for now. A lot of tweaking goes into these particle systems. Okay, so now at the collision, what you want to do is get the basis down and then start tweaking. Okay, so I've got that now, and I want to add another find target at this point. So I'm going to drag out a display operator to give myself another event here. I'm going to connect that. And inside this new event that was created, I'm going to drag out another find target. Okay, and the same thing, speed, you know, got our various little things there, and we'll, again, scale this guy down. This new one, we'll scale it down, and we're going to move this up. Now you're going to see what happens is it's going to go, you know, and just do all sorts of crazy stuff. Now, this is handy if you have an explosion on a hill or something. You can direct your debris. If you don't have the benefits of you know, buying expensive, you know, dynamics things, dynamic simulation or particle flow tools box 2 or things like that, this is really handy to get some really precise control of your debris. Now, obviously, this isn't what we want it to look like. So what we're going to do is come back in here, and we need some more gravity. So what I'm going to do is hold shift and grab my force and just drag it in here and hit instance and hit OK. Same thing with my, actually that's, we shouldn't need the speed. We should be good there. Now if you look here, it kind of goes and then falls. But you can see they still kind of hover around a bit. So what we want to do is, again, we want to hold shift and then drag our collision, bring it out here, instance that, and then we want to drag it in to our new event. I'll just instant that and then highlight this, delete it. Okay, now from here we just want to create what's called a garbage can, I guess, and we're just going to come in here and grab a delete operator. Again, alphabetical order. There we go. And I'm just going to connect that. Now, whenever a particle hits that deflector again, it's going to test true and delete. So we don't quite have enough momentum here. We want to kind of pick those up off there. So let's grab this fella. Alright, again, let's see what's going on here. I don't think we wanted to instance that, actually. So I'm going to grab another. I'm going to grab a collision, just a normal collision test. Grab the collision spawn there. Hit select. Drag this over. And then when it tests true, in other words, when it collides and bounces, we can choose all different times. Is slow after collisions just means that the minimum speed will be that after the collision. Is fast, same thing, only fast. Collides multiple times. You can choose how many times you want it to collide with the deflector before it tests true. So you can see now we've still got kind of a crazy little effect there, but you can see now they hit and they come up, and then when they hit the second time, they kind of disappear and delete. So you can choose to have it, like I said, collide multiple times, and let's say we'll have it collide twice. So now they'll kind of bounce a little bit and then delete. I'll bring this down and over. We want a higher effect on our gravity at this point, especially in that event particularly. So what I'm going to do is change this. Let's put that back to full influence, 1000. Again, see, now we kind of get this Little different effect. Let me do one tweak here just to illustrate what we just did. We're going to take the second find target, and I want to change the speed a little bit so we get some. And you can see as you position this differently, you can see now we get a little bit more realistic look here, but we need to change our speed now. So having trouble with screen real estate here, so I'm going to change my speed. You can see now they're coming kind of just barely out here, so we're going to change our speed a little bit and change our trajectory angle. And there we have kind of a more, and you can go to like your top view, which makes it a little bit easier to see the second trajectory, which is pretty handy. We'll just put that just over and maybe down a bit. Okay, and now you can see we've got this couple, it bounces a couple times. And you can control your debris as well. And again, you can come in here and just, you got to tweak away on these things. I'm going to change this to like 100. That's the speed that it goes towards the icon. So you see, we go just and changed a bit. And again, tweak, tweak, tweak. So change that back up to, let's say, 200. Hope you can see that there. Sorry about that. And the variation, maybe put that up just a bit, get some randomness. Down a bit. Excel limit, I usually leave those. Okay, so now you can see we're getting some randomness there. You can also, something that's kind of handy, is come into your display operators and choose lines for both, which gives you a better illustration as to the trajectory and the velocity of these particles. So I'm going to just move that straight above here. So you can see you can do all sorts of crazy stuff with something like this. And you can also just come in here and you can turn off that second find target, and you're just going to get the normal bounce. And then you're going to have to tweak that you know, all over the place and get it to look exactly how you want it to look. You can see change the chaos around. I'll put it 100%, let's say. The bounce variation we can turn up a bit, maybe add some more bounce, and you can see how that changes it, makes it a little more chaotic. Turn the friction way down, let's see, and see, it just, all these little tweaks make a big difference, because those are the things that are really going to sell the effect. It'll make or break the effect. So I hope this was helpful to you. I know that this isn't fancy, and I didn't mean it to be. This was meant to be technical. This was meant to show you some techniques you can learn and you can use and take them and you know, use them. So we looked at the gravity force, how to kind of utilize some deflectors, some test events in a pretty unique way to really precisely control particles. There's so much more you can do with particle flow. But I hope this was helpful. If you're just getting started in particle flow, I hope this was helpful. And another thing you can do is, again, Tools, Preset Manager, save as, whoops, just add it in here, mortar, blast, version 1, and just procedural mortar blast, and save, and there you have it. You've got your mortar blast saved. You can delete all this, and then that'll drag out, and you can use it anywhere and anytime. And like I said, everything here is meant to be placeholders, so you can replace these particles with a little, you know, mortar ball, cannonball. You can replace this deflector with you know, your sculpted terrain if you have it. You can also come in here and you can add shapes or shape instances to all of these events, and you can get specific shaped debris, rotations on your debris, and all that different stuff very simply. So I hope this was helpful to you. Again, my name's Evan Scheibel. Stay tuned for more tutorials right here on CG Toots Plus, and I will see you in the next video.